Hi, I'm Jordan Balderston. Did you know that around 270 million acres of land was distributed under the Homestead Act of 1862, according to Encyclopedia Britannica? That's around 7.5 states of Iowa. Chances are you have not heard of the Homestead Act, or if you have, you may not know exactly what it did and the effects and the impacts that it had on American society. I'm currently in an AP history class where we studied the Homestead Act, and I've done extensive research on this topic in order to truly understand this important piece of American history. In this speech, I'll discuss what the Homestead Act is, why and how it was passed, and the effects that it had on the American people. Now that we understand how much land was distributed under the Homestead Act, let's investigate the document itself and discover how so much land was passed out and the requirements that it took to obtain this land. The Homestead Act was the sale and distribution of 160 acres of government land to a private owner. According to the Encyclopedia of Immigration and Migration in the American West, under the Homestead Act, adult heads of families could purchase land for $1.25 an acre and only had to pay a small filing fee, and the rest of the money would be due for the land at the end of a 5-year period where the family would live and make improvements to this land. Most importantly, though, under the Homestead Act, the only requirements were that you must be the age of 21 or be the head of a family, which meant that immigrants, African Americans, or women could all purchase land under this act. Since we know what the Homestead Act was, we were able to see why and how it was passed. Representative Galusha Agro is the creator of the Homestead Act, and he helped to negotiate with the Congress as well as advocating the benefits to the public. Milestone Documents in American History says that the two major goals of passing the Homestead Act were to transfer public lands to private and to raise funds for the National Treasury. Finally, the act passed both the Senate and the House in 1860, only to be vetoed by President Buchanan. After the election of 1860, however, President Lincoln, supporter of the bill, signed this bill directly after it passed House and Senate in 1862, making it law. After learning why the act was passed and how and why it was pushed through, we must look at the effects it had on the nation afterward. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, the Homestead Act gave thousands of ex-slaves the ability to own land which was unattainable to do in the South. Around 25,000 moved to Kansas alone in the 1870s and 1880s. My AP US history teacher always stresses that not only did the act bring freedom and a fresh start to many Americans, but it also helped to expand west and fulfill that mindset of manifest destiny. But not only this, it brought new crops to the nation, such as hard red wheat brought from the German Russians. Although beneficial, the act was also substantially bad for the nation. The Milestone Documents in American History book talks a little bit about how the government hoped that this act would push Native Americans off of their homelands, which it accomplished. The act was also only land, which meant that many settlers had to still spend lots of money and invest lots of time into buying equipment, crops, and animals, which caused many of them to go bankrupt and lose their farms. Overall, we can see that the Homestead Act sold 160 acres to virtually anyone over the age of 21 or the head of a family, it was passed by the government to aid the people, and it had many benefits, but some caustic drawbacks. Throughout my speech, I have discussed what the Homestead Act was, how and why it was passed, and the effects on American society. So, if you didn't know about the act or knew very little, I hope that the next time you can have a discussion about this in history class, or if the topic comes up with a friend or a relative, you'll be able to have all the knowledge needed to fully explain this topic. I'll leave you with this final thought. If those 270 million acres of land are not distributed and kept as government land, how would history be altered today?